I had to definitely deal with the struggle of my identity at quite a young age, only because I knew that the gender that was being imposed on me was not who I was at a really early age. And the thing that's upsetting is that a lot of times people try to sexualize the transition. It's like, why are you thinking about sex? This is a child. Like, I didn't think about sex when I was transitioning. When I realized that, when I felt like I was a girl, I thought I was a girl. I didn't realize I was a boy. How much of a misconception what I was taught through the media, through my family, of how bad trans people were, and I didn't see any of that. I only saw positivity and beauty. It kind of made us a target, politically, through government leaders, through religious leaders, through society in a whole, because it's never been accepted.
If someone asks you to be respectful with their identity or whatever it is, you just should shut up and respect it.
Yes.
And get on with it. What message would you have for people who still hate us? Hello everyone and welcome to Trans Crash, the podcast where we dive into the stories, dating experiences and lives of trans women. I'm your host Paving and I'm so happy you are here, whether you are watching or listening on Trans Crash or tuning in on Trans Crash exclusive over on Patreon, where we have deeper, unfiltered conversations without any filter. Today's episode is a special one, and I would even say fabulous, because we have an amazing guest with us, Brandy X. Brandy is a London-based transgender artist, performer, and event designer. Her legacy continues to inspire many within the transgender community, and I'm so happy she is here with us today. Hi, Brandy. Welcome to Trans Crash.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Finally.
Yes. You are honestly I would say one of my favorite people in the London scene, and maybe even like my friends, because you are so. I just want to give our listeners a little background story on how we met. So we met at, I think it was 7-8 years ago, at this night called Bad Bitch, hosted by Rave Mandela, and you were at the door, and I think I was performing, and instantly I just felt like you took me under your wings, like your energy. I would say like your presence is very like mother energy, and you were so nice to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. I was like, I'm gonna look like her, because I was like in the beginning of my transition, and that's like my first memory or moment with you. So I just and here we are.
And here we are,
8 years later.
8 years later.
And I'm just so grateful you are here, and I'm so blessed.
That means a lot to me, babe. Who would have thought that we would make it this far, or we would be doing what we're doing now? And I'm so proud of you to see you shining and creating a new legacy for yourself, something that that's going to be documented in the history books for centuries to come.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
Thank you. So I have a little tradition for my trans guests here on the podcast, and that is, what makes you happy? So what makes you happy, Brandy?
To be honest, what makes me happy is making other people happy. I've always been a people pleaser, which sometimes has worked to my detriment. But for the most part, like, I just love making others happy through my positive vibe, through my shows, through any life experiences that I can share. I genuinely just love making people happy. And that's what makes me happy, and so... at times, like I said, it might work to my detriment, only because not everyone can be happy at all times, and not everyone will be happy with you. So sometimes it doesn't work that way, but it's like a yin yang. It's who I am, and it's what I do.
Beautiful. And you're doing well.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're making so many people happy, and I'm sure people who've seen you performing or they've met you in real life, they can confirm that for sure.
Oh,
yeah.
I hope so. They better. No.
So let's talk about a little bit where you from, and a little bit about your background and your childhood and stuff like that. So tell me something about your childhood.
Yeah, well, I'm from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. I've been there my whole life. My parents are both Mexican. And my childhood was, for if I, when I look back now, I did have a very happy childhood because I always try to focus on the positive aspects of my childhood. But again, for me, with who I was, who I am, and the journey that I've walked through, it was definitely not like your traditional or your normal childhood. Was always different, for like as many of us can relate, from birth, and so I had to definitely deal with the struggle of my identity at quite a young age, only because I knew that the gender that was being imposed on me was not who I was at a really early age. I remember being a child and growing up with my sister, who's a year and a few months younger than I am. We grew up like hip to hip, and she was obviously a biologically born girl, and I wasn't. So at a very young age, I kind of got. I realized that what gender I was a part of, and it just did not sit well with me. I remember just being devastated and upset the fact that I couldn't wear pink, I couldn't wear these cute dresses, I couldn't get my hair done like the way my sister did, I couldn't play with certain toys. And I know in the LGBTQ plus community in general, it's quite common. Not all of us transition into trans women, but I I just knew it was that I was female, and it took quite it took many years for my family to come around and accept that, just because I come from a very conservative Christian family, and it just didn't sit well with them, especially being a Mexican American and having my Mexican culture that's very homophobic and transphobic. It was just difficult to be anything other than who I felt I was, and just having these gender norms imposed on me. It just was devastating because I couldn't really understand. I'm a child, so I couldn't really understand why I couldn't do these things. And but I always had a very loving and supportive mother that supported me from the jump. She wasn't quite happy with my mannerisms and like the way I behaved, but I was a mama's boy, so if I dare say, one of her favorites. So for me, I think that kind of helped me definitely kind of get away with a few things. She would buy me like my dolls like behind my dad's back. I could play with it certain times. But having three older brothers, it was really difficult.
How many?
Three older brothers.
Three older brothers. Mm-hmm.
So I was the youngest, a boy of four. It's five of us, so it was quite a big family. And having brothers that were taught homosexuality is bad, it was really difficult, because then they have like the little gay F brother that wears the mom's heels, that only wants to play with his sister, who's not really good at sports, who it just didn't sit well with them. And I've learned to forgive them, because this is something that we went through when we were children. And when you're taught a certain way, especially as a child, you don't really understand. And so luckily for me, my whole family has come around, and we all love each other. We all support each other. They're some of my biggest fans. We have a great relationship, but it wasn't always that way. So I'm really happy that, we were able to overcome that, because I was ready to just, turn my back and live my life the way I wanted to, because I never thought in a million years that I would be trans, that I would be able to live as who I am. And it took that moment of courage for me to say, you know what, I'm going to live for myself. I'm tired of being judged. Nothing I can do is ever good enough, and I could never live up to what they wanted me to live up to. That was never going to be me, and I learned that when I was a teenager, and at a time when there was very little to no trans resources. Trans people were some people that came out at night, that thrived in the nightlife or in the streets, and people that were not accepted in society. Although now looking looking back and knowing what I know, trans people have always existed. They've always been integrated in society. You just wouldn't even know that they were. But when I started transitioning, it was a time where if you wanted to be, there was no trans. There was only, you were transitioning to be female. And if you were going to do that, you better do a good job at looking and sounding and being a woman, because if not, you were not going to be able to integrate into society. You were going to just, be a woman of the night. And I chose to transition, and so when I did, it wasn't easy, but I think because of the privilege that I have of being an attractive person, it kind of helped me kind of ease it into it a little easier than most. And for me, that was what kind of propelled me to just start loving myself and be and finding my power within my myself. And that moment of courage to transition and face my family was really what kind of broke any type of insecurity that I ever had, and really gave me the motivation to continue and to follow my dreams. Because before I transitioned, I didn't know what my future looked like. I didn't really care about life. I was like spiraling out of control. I didn't, and once I transitioned, everything just fell into place, And I know not every story is that way, but mine was, and I'm very fortunate about it because I don't know where I'd be now. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, where would Randy be, which was my birth name, Randy. Right. Yeah. So yes, my childhood was not easy by any means, but it was having my sister, which was one of my best friends, growing up with her, having her be kind of someone that protected me, even though she was a year and a few months younger than me. She definitely protected me from a very young age, because I was getting bullied left and right, not only from my brothers, but from their friends, my friends, cousins. Like, it was just like, and looking back, it's really kind of heartbreaking, because you think about children and you think about these kids being bullied. And I hated myself. I hated my life. It's just like, even though I say I was happy, because I did have a lot of love, and I did do things that were fun. But like I said, I have to think about the positive, because when you think about the negative, then it takes you to a dark place, and it makes you even more. I'm already disappointed in society in general, but when you think about the negative, looking back, it's just like, how do people treat children that way? Why was no one there to like save me or help me or try to help me understand or give me the tools to do better? So yeah, I think that if people understood me, and if I had resources that I could look to be able to find myself and find people that I could relate to, it would have been easier, but I didn't have that.
What age are we talking? Like, when was the moment when you knew you were a woman, and what age did you transition?
I was 4 years old when I felt like I was a girl. When I didn't even realize I was a boy, like, until I was able to start formulating thoughts and opinions, and then I was just like, wait, what? Like, so ever since I can think of, I always felt female, always. And so and when I decided to transition,
same here,
right? Yes, and that's something that a lot of trans girls can relate to. That's why I know that this is real, and I know that this is not just a made up fantasy, because the mind is a powerful thing, and for you to be young and not be able to
where is it coming from?
Formulate.
No one told
I know,
you to do
right?
that.
No,
it's in you.
And the thing that's upsetting is that a lot of times people try to sexualize the transition. It's like, why are you thinking about sex? This is a child. Like, I didn't think about sex when I was transitioning. When I realized that, when I felt like I was a girl, I thought I was a girl. I didn't realize I was a boy. Yeah. And so the sex had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. I didn't have gay cousins. I didn't have gay family. I didn't have anyone that was gay around me, because my family, to influence me, because my family was homophobic, and so that is just a lie, and it's a misconception about the community. Like, you can't change this, you can't fight it either. And so yeah, when I just started to transition, I was about 17, 18 when I started dressing up, and I was doing it very like kind of behind closed doors, and then also I would go out as well, but I wouldn't have anyone know about it or see me in
dress or
playing dress up. So So yeah, it was just
Yeah.
it took me because I didn't know anyone that was. I barely knew people, barely started meeting people that were gay because I was always taught to not speak to these type of people that.
And it was still in Los
It
Angeles?
was always all
Yeah.
in London. I've only lived in LA and London, so I've been here for 8.5 years now. So it was all in LA, and so
I'm surprised because LA is one of the biggest
yes,
cities or biggest
LGBTQ plus
yeah, community.
friendly, liberal
Yeah.
state. Yeah, yes. And so yeah, for me, I didn't realize that this whole new world existed. I remember I went online and I went on it was Google, and I was searching for like, transgender like outreach groups. No,
groups, okay.
and I couldn't find anything. I think the the LGBT center came up, but it was very clinical. It was like going to like the hospital and like, meeting like some sort of like, meeting other people, which would probably have been better for me to do. But of course, then you see the trans clubs as well on the same search results. So then I was like, ooh, trans clubs. And I was already like dressing up. I've always been a performer. So I was like, I started doing like my little shows and I started performing in drag. And so I felt comfortable dressing up. And so I remember going to the CD nightclub, which was one of the longest running transgender nightclubs in LA. And when I walked in, I was just so amazed and mesmerized by what I was seeing because I had never seen a trans person up close and personal or met one. So to see all these beautiful women running around the nightclub looking like hot, I was like, how the fuck do you do this?
Yeah.
Like, how does this happen? And I remember from that moment forward, like I was just completely invested into the trans nightclubs. And because I just started also being approached by men, and I didn't realize the dynamic between the admirers, which is men that like us, and how I felt about myself and my sexual identity and like what I liked, what I didn't like. So it was just like, oh my god, this hot guy's hitting on me. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And obviously, these people had a lot more experience than I did, but it was definitely just something like a kid in a candy store. I just couldn't believe my eyes. It was just like I felt like that moment. I was like, yep. This is it. This is what I want to do.
This is where I belong.
This is where I belong.
Yeah. So from what you've been telling me here, it sounds like that your childhood and all the expectations of your family and the society and everything, it really kind of made you think inside of the box. Like it made you feel so, I would say, almost restrained. I can really feel like when hearing your story, I felt so almost like suffocating. Like I could feel like you were such a beautiful, bright soul from young age and you just want to shine. But it sounds like the environment and people around you, closest people around you, didn't allow you to shine, I don't want to say dimming the light. Maybe they were.
Well, that's it.
But just I feel like you were so restricted for so long that being finally out and, having your first experience in the club scene or out and about must have been so freeing for you.
It was.
When was the moment when you were like really loud and proud and you said, I'm not gonna hide anymore?
I would say like maybe a year to 2 years into me dressing up, I started doing drag. And that was kind of like my introduction to doing this, to being able to, present as female on a regular basis. And after that, I was just getting into becoming more of an adult because I was like 19, almost 20. And I remember after that, I just could not see myself being anything other than who I was in that state. But I didn't understand. I didn't think that I could ever, actually go through with it just because of how much I do love my family and the fear of losing them. But that's when I came to the point where I said, you know what, like I'm going to continue be living this lie, and I don't want to do it anymore. I have so much to live for. I want to follow my dreams, my aspirations, and this is who I am. So from that moment forward, I stopped speaking to my family other than my sister. I wasn't living at home. So I just wanted to create this new identity and this new life for myself. and just thinking about everything that I'd been through prior, I just found myself just not caring anymore. You know, it's that in my head, I started kind of, I started to, like, you know, having a grudge towards my family, because of, I felt at that time that they had ruined my life, that they weren't supportive, and how much they hurt me. So they were no longer a factor, in my transition. And, so I started, transitioning. I started hormone therapy, and this was like black market hormones, you know, getting it from like the club lady. And I thought in my mind that I was young and just didn't really understand life. And so I thought in my mind I would never see my family again, other than my sister. I remember my sister being extremely concerned throughout those 6 months because I was speaking to my family. And she was like, when are you going to come home? Come see mom. You know, she's worried about you. I'm like, I'm not. They're never going to accept me. I just can't do it. I just can't. Just want to be left alone. Because I was just, to be fair, I was just really happy with the way things were going. And I was happy with my new life. And I just, every day that I would go by, I would be happier and happier, and just started thinking towards the future. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And being a performer and doing drag, I was already creating my platform and a name for myself. And so I was really happy about the way things were going. And I just, for once in my life, I just loved myself, and I was looking forward towards the future. And she saw the happiness in me, but it also broke her heart, the fact that, you know, in her mind, bless her heart, she was younger than me, so I can imagine what she was going through. You know, seeing her big brother, you know, at the time, going through this very big change that none of us were prepared for, that none of us understood,
had experience
or experienced. My sister as well, she was extremely sheltered, and so I went through with it. And I remember, like, one day she like called me and she's like, hey, you know what, I had to tell mom, like, this is 6 months later, I had to tell mom, like, you know, I don't know what to do, like, I'm worried, I was worried, and I just like, she thinks she should know, and she has to be there for you, she has to understand. And so I was really and at that moment I was just like, you know what, like, you're right, like, what am I hiding from? What am I running from? What am I hiding from? They're like, I'm doing nothing wrong. Like, and at that time, I already saw the beauty within my community. These women, these people from all walks of life, how kind they were, how each one of us them had a story, and how much of a misconception what I was taught through the media, through my family, of how bad trans people were. And I didn't see any of that. I only saw positivity and beauty, and people that, you know, were not given a chance. And so I you know, I took that moment to really just accept the reality and go meet with my family and let them know what I was doing, where I was going, and that I was never going to look back, and that if they were going to be a part of my life, they were going to have to respect me, and that I would never be who I was, that this is this is the new me, the real me. Yes.
Beautiful. Sounds like it really shows resilience and strength, you know?
Yes. And you know what? Sadly for me...
And how old were you at the time?
I was 20 years old. 20 years old, yeah. And sadly for me, I've always been used to having these, like, hardships, and I've always grown from hardships. And it's not the best way to grow from, but I've learned, like, you know, these really important experiences. And I've also learned a lot about myself, and I've also gained a lot of strength through these moments, you know. Not that I want to. Obviously, no one wants to go through some of the things that we go through, but that's life. And I've understood that from a very young age, and I've also understood that things could always be worse for me. So I'm grateful, you know, to have gotten this far. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so when you were in LA, were you just performing already the time when you were 20, when you like started transitioning? Were you already the club diva?
I was beginning to be a club diva. Actually, I was in beauty school. So
Same.
Yes, yeah. So that kind of helped me as well, like with my beauty
It
image.
does, for sure.
Learning how to do hair, learning how to do makeup, you know, being amongst women, kind of creating a sisterhood around cis women, which also kind of made me feel right at home. You know, I remember just feeling fabulous and just really kind of getting to know my aesthetic. And from the very moment that I hit the LA nightlife, I was embraced by my dear friend Nacho Neva, which may he rest in peace. He was a big force in the LA nightlife, underground LA nightlife. He was extremely creative, passionate about his work. Really helped a lot of people that are now famous kind of jumpstart their career, including myself. And so unfortunately we lost him, but like, you know, just seeing someone that was just so powerful and thinking outside of the box within the LA nightlife was so nice to have him be my close friend and seeing something special in me. So I started performing. I was going to beauty school. I started working at a salon, but I had always been in retail as well. So I've always been an extremely hard worker. I was retail management. I was working in all sorts of different departments for high-end boutique stores as well. Going to beauty school, and then I started working at a very high-end salon for one of the creators of Bumble and Bumble. I was already well into on my way of becoming an extremely successful hairstylist. I started doing makeup. I did a few stars as well, celebrities. I started doing through my fashion sense. I was styling as well. I had a lot going on.
Wow.
Like I was already performing. I was modeling. I was doing TV work as well. By the time I was 24 years old, I got accepted into the SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Guild, for my contributions to acting. I was a feature many times, doing everything and anything that was coming my way. And at that time, I already looked very feminine, and I was already working as a female as well. So that was a bit like, but that was what I was taught by the older trans women, that you know, you have to simulate a female, you have to present female, you have to deny the fact that you're trans, because if people know that you're trans, you're not going to have these same opportunities, and you're not going to be accepted in society. And it was true, because I was always having to look behind my back, and there was a few times when production did realize that I was trans, and they would either cut me off, or they would a few times that I was actually asked to leave because they did not want me to be a part of it, even though they thought I was a female. The moment they found out I wasn't genetic female, I was nothing. I would be like a hot girl. The moment they found out, oh no, we don't want him, that's a man. Like I could have been seen as the most beautiful, attractive girl, but the moment they found out I was trans, I was a man. So that really kind of helped me. That affected me, and it was a bit of a mind fuck, because like, oh my god, like I realized that maybe I wasn't gonna have that perfect life, but I was still happy in the way I was presenting nonetheless.
When I heard you talking about your background and like how much you've done, and the retail and fashion, we have so much in common. I didn't even have no idea until you told me now that like we both like did makeup and work in department stores and work in fashion and beauty. It does really help you to create the image for yourself when you're a trans woman, because there's so many trans women who, you know, they have they're not performers, they're not artistic, and they have, let's say, they are, scientists, or they're just not in the field. And for them it's kind of harder, because they need a professional help, and they need to pay.
Yes.
They need to pay for it, right?
Yes.
But for ourselves, we just did it ourselves.
Yes.
And we just kind of like, we were our own makeup artists and stylists and hairdressers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It helps.
It gives you the tools, doesn't it, for you to be feminine, more feminine, you know, ultra feminine. And so that was something that I was quite lucky with. And it's also a privilege, isn't it? Because it's one less thing that you have to worry about, you know, when you can glam yourself up to like a beautiful, you know, celebrity standard beauty.
And back to the rejection, how did it make you feel when you had so many no's, and like just because you are trans, or even they call you a man sometimes, right? Because it's not usually beautiful, pretty, or like nice.
Right? No. It's
how did it make you feel?
I felt uncomfortable. I felt embarrassed. I felt like belittled. It was upsetting for sure, but the fact that I was celebrated already by my community, and I was already an artist, I was already finding my way. I didn't dwell on it, and again, I learned how to deal with pain and disappointment at a very young age, and so it's something that I would just block out. I'd be like, okay, next. I'd move on to the next thing, and that's pretty much how I am still. So I think that that's a very important trait of mine that I've learned to master, to not give a fuck. So of course it's hurtful. But
Beautiful mastery.
yes, right. It's hurtful, but
important.
I can't dwell on it because
No.
it's gonna affect my mental health. It's gonna make me feel less than, and I'm not gonna allow it to affect my performance and what I do because I know I'm amazing. So
Do you think the situation is better now?
yes. Oh, 110%. Yes, 110%. Yeah.
Why is it different, do you think?
Also, I think because I'm well respected in London. I'm an artist. I'm a performer. I do music. I'm in places that certain people cannot be in and be a part of, and I feel quite lucky in that sense. But I also know how hard I've worked and the path I've created for myself, and so that allows me, and just not me being where I want to be when I want to be, and I'm not where I'm not wanted ever. So I just I kind of live in my own bubble, even though I'm a part of this big community. I also have a small circle, and I'm around people that I love, people that that can relate with me, and people that see me for who I am, so that I don't really care about the opinions of others. I just do me. Okay. And I'm very much, this is my world, and, so on and so forth. I think we all have to create our own universe, and where we're the epicenter of it, because, if not, people are not really nice. And I think that once you kind of have that train of thought, it other people can see it. It creates a force field around you, a shield, and to protect yourself, because I really don't have any issues. Thank goodness. I don't.
Do you think people who are, let's say, in their 20s or transitioning as well, do you think they face the same rejection like as they did 10 years ago, in terms of the no's from companies and stuff like that? Or do you think it's better? Or do you think also it happens now? Are you trans? Work for us?
Sadly, I think that it might be worse now, only because of we're just like there's a spotlight on the community now, because for so long we were living in the darkness, and there was very few of us out in the open and working and being respected. That when the transgender tipping point is what I call it, in about 2015, when Laverne Cox was on Times Magazine, that really was what propelled the trans community. That's when Instagram really was where people started kind of taking it to Instagram, YouTube, and you started seeing all these trans people that actually existed and that were doing their own thing, and it opened up the world that they had no idea of. And with that, more and more people were inspired to transition, and which was a great thing. But also it kind of made us a target, politically, through government leaders, through religious leaders, through society in a whole, because it's never been accepted, So it's something that most of the time back in the days, you just would not even talk about, They depicted us as men wearing wigs, clowns, unattractive, so many different negative things that people were realizing that maybe we were not attractive, that we are attractive, that we have our own stories, our own paths. But with that, I think that it's just been so ingrained into society to look down on us that it's really hard to overcome that. And so I feel like now, with all these trans people coming out, and trans people from all walks of life, the representation, and it's just like people trying to not understanding as well, society not understanding, and then when you were attractive, you were sexualized, and you were labeled this, that, and the next. So it's a little, with social media, it's not the nicest place to be in, especially when it relates to gender identity or race or certain other expectations of the beauty standards, and with social media and with filters and certain augmentations with surgery for females as well, but just as difficult as it is for biological women, there's a layer of complications for trans people, because we are not naturally born biological women. So there's things that we have to do to get to that stage and that level, and not everyone should or wants to be the dolls, and they shouldn't. And so that's also, I feel like that the government and world leaders, I wish they would come around and really just respect us as a whole and just not have pick and choose. There's great influencers, there's great like people that create a positive impact, trans people that create a positive impact within our community, and I think we should all just be given a chance.
Do you think people need to be more open to trans people and less judgmental and really willing to learn, just because from the media and from the politicians and world leaders you can hear how horrible we are as a community and how dangerous we are? What message would you have for people who still hate us?
My message is to open up your heart, open up your mind. You don't have to be friends with us, but you should definitely respect us. And I feel like that's just with any walk of life that you don't understand. It's like we're not trying to make you be a part of our life. We're just trying to live our lives the best that we can in a world that's so unforgiving. And I just feel like, if you don't like it, you don't have to like it, but you should respect other people. And if you don't feel like you're capable of respecting other people, then just pretend like we're not there. Just like take yourself out of that space. Because this world is for us too, and we should be able to feel safe and to feel like we can follow our dreams and be anyone who we want to be, really.
I always say this when you mention the word respect and people who are not respectful towards us. I always give them a little comparison of, in a Western culture, when a woman gets married, she gets the husband's name usually. So I was like thinking about that let's say the woman gets married at age 35, 40, and you are her friend, or you just know her. And you know her as Katie Simpson, whatever.
Yes.
And then she gets married. And after 40 years, her surname changes. But you respect it. You're learning because it's her new surname. So you don't call her Katie Simpson anymore. You call her Katie Hudson. I'm joking. No. Example.
Yes.
Like, you just call her the new surname because that's a respectful thing to do. And she's not Simpson anymore.
Yes.
And she's Hudson now. And you don't say, it's really hard for me to remember. It's really hard for me to change it, That's on you.
Yes.
This is a matter of respect. Doesn't matter if it's your name, if it's your pronoun, whether it's your title, anything. If someone asks you to be respectful with their identity or whatever it is, you just should shut up and respect it and get on with it. Because if you don't, then it shows so much about you as a person. Because then if you can't respect people, then you're not really going to win in your life.
You're not going to win in your life. And respect is free. It's something that we should all do. The world would be a better place if we respected one another. Just that would solve all of our problems in the world if we respected each other. And yeah, I'm a firm believer that you just need to let people be. Let people do what they want, how they want it, when they want it. As long as they're not affecting you, then there should be no problem. And when we represent 1% of the world's population, less than 1% of the world's population, we're not really a threat. I think the threat is with themselves, not with us, and it's something that they need to overcome.
Fear
they need
to learn.
Exactly. And it's the same, a great comparison was, when I was a child growing up in the early, when I was a kid, in the early 2000s, I was like a teenager. It was like front page news if an artist came out as gay. There was not very even gay celebrities. You couldn't say that you were gay.
It was
yeah. That was
20 years ago. It was really
like the
like, oh my
Backstreet
God,
Boys, insane. I don't know. Yeah. Oh
looking
my
down
God.
on you.
Looking
Almost.
down on you. You had to come out with your story, and people came around. And so I feel like it's no different with the trans community. They really need to kind of learn or just respect and mind your business.
100%.
Jump on board and mind your business.
Jump on board and mind your business.
Yes,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I really feel that, and I think it's gonna get better. Like, I really always believe that before the light, there's always dark, or the darkness. And right now, I feel it very heavy right now for the community, especially in America. And because, America does influence the rest of the world, and I just feel so sad and scared for my trans siblings in America, but at the same time I feel so hopeful, because the more education and information we're going to have on trans people and trans people's topics, we going to really educate the public and the society in general. And then, as it was bad 20 years ago to be gay, I think now it's just no one really cares anymore. Like,
Yes.
it's just gay. So I think it's gonna be the same with trans people.
Yes.
Like, now it's just so controversial, so like, oh my gosh, she's trans, and like, they can't really go without us, without mentioning trans, like she's trans, like, very, as it was the most important thing in the world. Like, yes, we are trans, but there's so much to us than our identity.
Exactly.
So I'm really hopeful that it will change with time. But for now, we just have to keep the good fight, and keep fighting and keep being loud, and
and
have
proud.
the representation, and proud, and really share our stories. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and my advice to trans people is definitely work on yourself, learn what makes you happy, learn your trait, like, find what makes you special, because as long as you're working on yourself, you'll always progress in life. It's like, it took me many years to finally, be in a space where, I know that I belong, and I also know that I'm leaving my mark, and so I think that if just focus on yourself, work on yourself. Society can be cruel, but you need to definitely just focus on you, because the more you love yourself, the better you're going to be off in life. That's just my advice to my community, because people can be nasty, and at the end of the day, all you have is you, and you want to love yourself, the good and the bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say it better. So now let's turn the page. You live in London now. How old were you when you moved to London?
When I moved to London, I was 26 years old. Yeah, 26 years old. Yeah, 26 years old.
Yeah. And what made you move here?
No, I'm sorry. No, 26 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
What made me move here? My ex-husband. Whew. My ex-husband. I met my ex-husband in 2013, and we hit it off from the start. We had a long distance relationship. I was living in America, he was living here in the UK, and I think that we just kind of became just so in love at such a quick pace that we both wanted to, live our lives together. And obviously, having a long distance relationship, it wasn't easy. We would have to be seeing each other every other month. He would come to meet me like in America somewhere. I'd come to London as well quite often. So it was just back and forth. We made it work, but with what I was doing with my life already, working in the industry, it was really hard for me to juggle a long distance relationship and my career that was just barely starting. And also the love that I had for him was just becoming greater and greater, that I was just like, I didn't feel like I could be in a long distance relationship because of how much I missed him, how much of a priority I was making him, and just not being with him. I felt like I was in a relationship, but a ghost relationship, to where if I really needed him and I needed a hug, I needed to be held, I needed to see him in person, I just didn't have that option. So I wanted to break things off, but we both decided to get married, and for me to move to London just because it's somewhere I always wanted to live, and I just wanted I wanted to just kind of, now being married and I wanted like a new start. I'd never lived anywhere else. I've always lived in LA, born and raised, and London. And so I thought it was a good idea, but I mean, it didn't turn out the best. I was with him for almost 9 years. It was a very long relationship. Long relationship. And again, at a time when the trans people were not out, so for me to be proposed to and become engaged and then get married, I felt like I was living a dream. I felt like it was gonna like my fairy tale beginning. It's just like, oh my god, I'm gonna get married. This is like makes so much sense. Like I'm a real girl.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I was following
Yeah.
in the path that I always dreamed of.
I literally like fairy tale. Like I'm married.
Especially getting married at that time.
Yeah.
It's just like there was trans people were not getting married.
No.
And so
that must have made you feel so good.
it did. It did.
It sounds like it.
So when we got married, his friends and family did not know I was trans, and we played it off for years. There came a point when they found out. They started like snooping through like my social medias and like kind of following the trail, and they found out I was trans, and it was like a big controversy in his small hometown.
What about his family? Did they know it?
They didn't know.
Just his friends.
Parents. Just his friends. No, they didn't know.
Oh,
no,
wow.
They didn't know. And his friends found out, and they like totally made fun of him. They made fun of me. They when I met them, they respected me. As female again. Oh my god, she's so hot. Wow, how'd you get her? Oh, good for you. She's American. She's Latina. Blah 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 blah. They welcomed me with open arms. And when they found out I was trans, it was just like, oh, you're marrying a dude. Like, was that a wig? Like, just like some very immature points that they were making, and just the things that again. How damaging a television can be, and these ideas that we are freaks, and so he took that very difficult, and I mean so did I. Although again, I don't really care what people say. So at that moment, I was already like, oh hell no. But trying to be understanding and sympathetic with him and wanting not to affect him, we were kind of like I was like, well, you know what? I really don't mind if you don't want to continue with this relationship, because I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to be... absolutely no question. He's like, no, absolutely not. I want to be with you. I want to be with you. You're my world. I don't care what they say. They don't jump on board. I'll never speak to them again. And he was really upset about that. Obviously, I was upset as well, even though, it wasn't really my problem. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's something I can't control. So they don't like it. Where do we move from here? And so he made it known that, they had to respect me and try to kind of like, give them a sense of understanding of where I come from, who I am, how I identify, how I carry my life. And from that moment, which it wasn't that long about the making fun of and name calling, it was just a very short period because he was one of their best friends. They all grew up, kind of together in high school and through their young adulthood. So, they changed their tune, and, when I saw them again, they were like completely, they were back to where we were in the beginning. They understood. They understood. And you know what? I forgave them because they turned out to be lovely people, lovely. And they're from a small town in North Wales, and a lot of the times they have a different mindset as well. There's like no people of color there, and so I was happy and proud that I was able to change their mind, and kind of give them a sense of understanding. And they loved me. I loved them. They were lovely people. Again, I didn't hold grudges because I know that the world that we're living in, and how and the misunderstanding and the misconception within my community, and what I was doing, what I was accomplishing with my life, they admired that, and they were just lovely people. So we were able to move on from that and open up a whole world to them as well, because they were always very like supportive and interested in what I was doing and my community. And so that was nice. That was nice. And I've had that same outcome with other friends and people that from friends. So I'm really proud that people like me, because I'm not the only one, obviously that are able to change people's minds and people's hearts. I think that's so important. That's why
so
I don't take the
important.
negativity so serious.
So good.
Because with the negativity, there's always a opportunity to make it
So
into a
good.
positive.
I always say, like, if you stay strong within yourself and you really know who you are, comments such as "it's a man"
Right, exactly.
doesn't bother you because you know
bother
you're
you.
not. Like, you
Yes.
just laugh at it, Yes. Like, I always feel like, you always take comments or critique to heart only if it really believe in it.
Yes.
And if it really affects you.
Right.
And if you are insecure about it,
Yes.
know? So if you really know that who you are and you're proud, you're loud, and you know you have the power to change people's lives, as we do,
Yes.
you know, then it's amazing because the change is you.
Yes.
And then you look back at your life, whether you are 50 or 30, whatever, and you're like, yeah, I changed this many people. And this many people educated someone else. And they
Yes.
educated someone else. So really, the change starts
Definitely.
within us, whether you are trans or whatever you are.
Yes.
If you have a message to share with the world, and you know who you are, you know your truth, and you have the best possible intentions, do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Then you'll be feeling like Mother Teresa over here, like for real, changing the world, walking
are.
children in nature, for sure. Like, definitely.
We are the trans Mother Teresa.
Yes, I know, right? There's so much power in being who you are, loving yourself, which is why I always say, like, love yourself, find out who you are, what makes you happy, because through that, that's a power that no one will ever be able to take from you, you know? And it's a very strong, powerful tool to have in life, because a lot of people go through their whole lives without knowing who they are. And so trans people, I think that, again, learning from hardships and growing from hardships, not ideal, but you know, this is the moment that we're living in. This is how it is. You know, we have to accept that and do the best that we can with what we have.
So now you're in London. You have TransParty London every Saturday, right?
Every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Well, the TransParty London is the umbrella of our trans parties.
Right.
So we have Temptation, Doll's House, and Seduction.
Right. I know you have Temptation on Thursdays.
Yes.
Seduction Saturday.
Yes, Seduction's
It's like
every other
Temptation
Saturday.
Thursday. Seduction Saturday. And then Dollhouse.
In Brighton.
In Brighton.
Yeah, we're going to be coming back in end of April for our new season of Doll's House, Volume
Nice.
2.
What made you start doing these events?
Well, working as an event manager for 5 years for one of London's leading venues. I was when I left that position, like I said, I've always worked in retail. I've always worked in like management. I've always worked in all of these different industries. It was time for me to create something for myself. And I didn't want to necessarily be working for anyone else, although I still work with in collaboration and for other companies, like, you know, as far as dancing and festivals, is that and the next. But I knew I was in a position where I wanted to create my own brand. I wanted to create something for myself. And rather than just being focused on me, I wanted to make it for the community. And so working in trans clubs for a decade prior in Los Angeles, I wanted to do something because I feel like the trans community and the nightlife in London is just underserved. There's not enough of it, and not enough not enough of events that actually cater to the trans woman, you know, and that's something that I wanted to do, being that I work nightlife and I'm a performer and the event managing, event creating. I wanted to just formulate an event that was circled around the trans community and at the same time around the men that admire us, the men that love us, because a lot of times they're left out of the conversation as well. And I feel like if we're going to move forward as a community, I think that the men have to be a part of the table as well. You know, they need to
100%.
have a place, a seat at the table, so they can also, because a lot of times they are the ones that are going to be changing people's opinions and people's minds, because they want to make it seem, society wants to make it seem that we're undesirable. Well, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, honey. If more men step up to the plate and are more vocal about the support for trans women, and you start seeing more trans relationships and all sorts of things of that nature, I think it'll help society just humanize us, because at the current time we're being dehumanized left and right, you know, in the government and legislations and around the world. And so, you know, it's a critical moment in time where we need to really kind of band together. And also, I feel like trans women need to have a little bit more respect for themselves and not just, you know, give themselves to people who don't deserve them. That's why in my dating career, no, my dating life, I have always held men accountable, and it's like, you know, I mean, we pick and choose, you know, and so I don't ever allow myself to be disrespected or be someone's secret or anything like that. And luckily for me, I don't have that issue of, you know, being seen in public, which a lot of times, sadly, is one of the issues that trans women go through. It's like, you know, just being out in public with a man and having them feel uncomfortable, and also the trans woman feeling uncomfortable herself. You know, again, love yourself, get to know yourself, you know, build that confidence, because that's something that no one will be able to take away from you. And for me, it's something that, you know, I make sure that I talk about when I meet someone. And again, it's not the most important. Me being trans is not the most important thing about myself. It's just a part of me, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's important in the sense where right now we're fighting a battle, and so I want to definitely be vocal about my transness, because I know that I have the power to move people and I kind of bring a sense of understanding, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. It took me a while to be comfortable with my trans side, because for a long time I was denying the fact that I was trans. I was working as cis female, getting clocked here and there, and I never thought in a million years that we would be able to be loud and open. So even when the trans boom happened and I got married shortly after, I wasn't out as trans. Even with my husband, my ex-husband, he did not want me telling people that I was trans. He didn't want me posting about it. Never posted about it on my social media until you know, quite recently, since right before my separation, when I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to start posting about these trans issues. I'm going to start because this is my life. This is who I am. It was the right thing to do. And he was accusing me of doing it for attention, for doing it for attention because I want to go viral. I'm like, honey, if I want to go viral, I would. There were other things that I could do.
Yeah.
It's not that I want to go viral. I don't need to go viral. I am who I am. I'm happy with the platform that I do have and what the impact that I've already had on my community. Even prior to this, you know, even prior to being out and open and loud and trans. I mean, it was a journey for me. It was like a lot of my insecurity stemmed from my relationship and him not allowing me to be out and open. And I just felt like, you know, I was in a position where I put myself in this corner, and I couldn't seem to find my way out, you know, and it was just difficult because, you know, I saw the trans community, you know, booming, and I just was not being a part of it, you know, and for me, it was just like, I know how much I belong there and how much I can contribute. And you know, the fact that I've also paved the way for a lot of trans people from LA to London. You know, I was trans, well, almost 10 years before I even moved to London. So I've already been living that life, you know. And so I was just assimilating as female because I didn't want people to know. But then luckily for me, I was like, I accepted myself and I said, you know what, bring it on, baby. You know, I'm not going to play these games. Like, this world is for me too.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want when I want, as long as I'm not hurting anyone, of course. And so
that's my philosophy too.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my philosophy too. Like, I always say, like, do whatever you want, as long as you don't hurt yourself and others. Then I think that's a beautiful philosophy to have, because it's all covered. You know?
It's all covered. It's all covered.
All covered. I can't wait to talk about more about your dating experience on Patreon.
Yes.
It's gonna be a lot of tea spilled. It's gonna be no filter. Yes. So if you're interested in Brandy's story unfiltered on her terms, go on Patreon after this episode. You mentioned that you really found yourself, and you mentioned the journey to acceptance and self-love. What advice would you have for someone who is in their transition? Doesn't matter if it's beginning or I was not gonna say end. I was gonna say beginning or through the journey. And they really struggle with self-love. They know they love themselves, but they have really strong gender dysphoria. What's the difference between like I'm a trans woman or trans man, I have gender dysphoria, but at the same time I love myself, but at the same time you hate some parts of your body?
Right.
What would you tell them?
I think that that's something that we can all relate to, no matter what you identify with, what gender you are, what race you are. It's like we always we live in a society that there are certain beauty standards, there are certain characteristics and mannerisms and things that society has instilled in certain genders and certain like identities that you want to live up to it. And when you feel like you're not, you feel a bit insecure, even though you may love yourself. That's something that just, we're human beings. So it's just, sometimes we're our worst critic, and it's something that I think we'll always live with. I don't think that there is anyone in the world that, even when you are beautiful, even when you are this model, this perfect specimen, there's always things within yourself that you might not be happy with. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical. It can also be emotional. It could also be mental. It could come in different various forms. And that's something that, I mean, it's human nature to feel that way, and that's something that we can all relate to. So just accepting the fact that you may not always be happy with who you are, but that's okay. It's okay.
I think even cis women go through that.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
They struggle with their appearance, or like the society's expectations and all of that. So I think, especially with trans women, we kind of try to fight, am I doing it for myself or for others, and also the expectations of how a woman should look.
Yes.
So cis women go through exactly the same.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The expectations. Yep. I don't know if you remember the trend of not shaving armpits 10 years ago, when like Miley Cyrus or Madonna. And that's so much backlash from cis men who didn't like it, And there was again, this is this expectation and stereotype of a woman's look, how she should look, how she should behave, It was really interesting trend for me to observe as well.
Oh, yeah. No, it's human nature. And we have one vessel. This is who we are. If you want to change it, change it. If you want to tweak certain things, tweak them. But I mean, in general, just learn to love yourself, including your imperfection. And that's something that I did as well. That I learned to love the things that I don't necessarily love about myself, because there's certain things that you just can't change, and you might as well learn to love them.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. So what's next for Brandy now?
Well, what's next for me? I'm working on a lot of things. TransParty London is expanding. I'm trying to juggle, creating these events and really kind of giving myself to this part of my career, as far as like the event creating and managing, and because I'm also an artist on my own, and so it's a bit hard at times to juggle both, because this is the TransParty London is a whole force on its own, and it requires a lot of attention.
Imagine.
And I also have certain dreams and aspirations that I want to complete. I want to do more music. I want to do more television, more modeling. And so I'm learning how to juggle with the both of them. And so just continuing to focus on the things that that are in front of me, and just doing the best that I can, because sometimes it just becomes a lot. I'm like, in a sense, I have two lives, it's like my TransParty life that requires a lot of attention, and then Brandy X, which requires equally as much. And I really want to make Brandy X a priority, but like I said, I'm a people pleaser. I really want, I don't want to forget my community, but I also understand that I need to put myself first, because if I don't continue to follow my dreams and do what makes me happy, then I will be no good for the community that I'm currently 100%. Serving.
You gotta pour from the empty cup.
Yes, exactly. And I want to invest more time and energy into my friendships, because right now I'm just working, and I feel like I also want to have like a life outside of my career and outside of my job.
Yeah. Well, call me for dinner then.
Yes, I know, right? Which includes you.
We need to get
Which includes you, because we really don't get to see enough of each other, do we?
Oh my God. We either see each other, I would just say out partying, or like, at Temptation, or I never see you otherwise. And I would love to like just go and just hang out and just have dinner and cocktail.
Yes, I know, right?
Just
sounds good right about
now. Yeah, no, it's good. Well, I'll be the first one you got a call, okay?
Yes, for sure.
When you have the time.
Yes. We'll make time.
And one last question for our listeners and viewers here on Trans Crash is, what advice would you give to anyone who is still having little hesitation and hate towards trans people?
I would say just see us as people. Don't focus on what's in between our legs. Don't focus on what bathroom we use. Don't focus on our physical appearance. Like, just try to, do your own research. There's Google, there's other resources out there that you can learn about trans lives, because if you're going to hate the community, you need to know why you hate us. And if you hate us, then, and whatever it is, that reason you hate us, we could probably dismantle that. And there could probably be, you can be in a position where, you don't necessarily hate us, but you don't have to love us, but you don't have to hate us either. And I think that's extremely important. It's just like, it's just a misconception. It's just fake news. And I just feel like, I think it's in everyone's best interest and everyone's responsibility to get to know all walks of life, which is something that I've done as well. It's like, I don't have to be or identify with a certain walk of life in order for me to be able to understand them and appreciate them, because there's so much positivity that comes from us that you can definitely learn from us, and you can appreciate it. And you never know, maybe one day you'll end up loving us as well.
It was such a beautiful, deep, insightful conversation. And I've always loved you, but now I love you even more.
Oh, my sweetie. Thank you for having me, honestly. This is great.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure that you going to educate so many people who are going to listen and inspire many people, not only trans people, but really anyone who wants to be even more powerful and resilient and louder. And thank you so much for everything that you do.
My pleasure, honey. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Trans Crash. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, because I did. And if you want more, head over to Trans Crash exclusive on Patreon, where me and Brandy go even deeper with unfiltered, intimate discussions. And hey, whether you're having lunch or you're in a rush, just relax and listen to Trans Crash. See you next Thursday.
He's like, hey, actually, change of plans. We're getting a divorce. I'm going with my mom, and you sort yourself out. You figure out what you're going to do. And I'm just like, what? Girl, he just used me. He used me, abused me, and then threw me out.
What advice would you have for a trans woman who is in an abusive relationship? I knew you were going through a lot, but I didn't know you were going through this.
Woo.
This is hard. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Honestly, yeah, you don't deserve it. If he was here, what would you tell him right now if you saw him here right now?
So I did things that I later regretted. I had these double D boobs. These are my second set, so these are my smaller ones.
Okay.
I had to go into emergency surgery the next day when the doctor saw me. He's like, oh yeah, that's infected. There's liquid buildup. You gotta have surgery tomorrow. I was like,